This is Vergil's Aeneid, translated into English by Robert Fitzgerald. Book 9. While all these differing actions were afoot in the far distance, Juno from high air sent Iris down to Turnus. As it chanced, that day the rash prince rested in the grove of his forbear, Pilumnus, in a valley blessed of old. There Iris, rose-lipped child of Thaumas, told him, "Turnus, what no god would dare to promise you your heart's desire, the course of time has of itself brought on. Leaving his town and ships and followers, Aeneas journeyed to the Palatine court of Evander. Still unsatisfied, he's gone to distant hamlets of Corythus to rally and arm the Lydian countrymen. Why hesitate? Now is the time to sound the call for cavalry and war cars. Now! Break off this lull, strike at their flurried camp, take it by storm!" On even wings she rose into the sky, inscribing her great bow in flight upon the clouds. He knew her sign, and lifting both his hands to starry heaven, sent these words after her: "Glory of the sky, who brought you down to me, cloud-born, to earth? What makes the sudden brilliance of the air? I see the vault of heaven riven, and stars that drift across the night sky. I'll obey this great presage, no matter who you are who call me to attack." Then riverward he took his way, and from the surface drew pure lustral water. Then he heaped his vows plenteously on heaven. Soon his army at full strength moved out through open land, studded with riders, with dyed cloaks and gold. Messapus commanding the forward units, Tyrrus' sons the rear, Turnus the center, as Ganges, fed by 7 tranquil streams, flows high and quietly, or Nile goes full in a seaward channel, when the enriching flood ebbs from the fields at last. A distant cloud, in black dust mounting up, a darkness rising, suddenly on the plain came to the eyes of Trojan lookouts. Then Caicus yelled from the rampart facing inland, "Countrymen, what is the mass of men there on the plain in a dark cloud of dust? Take arms, be quick! Hand missiles out and spears, and man the walls! Here comes the enemy! On guard!" In tumult, back to the camp, through all the gates retiring, Trojans took position on the walls, for so on his departure their best soldier, Aeneas, had instructed them. If any emergency arose, not to do battle, not to entrust their fortunes to the field, but safe behind their walls to hold the camp. Therefore, though shame and anger tempted them to a pitched battle, even so they barred their gates as he commanded, and compact in towers, armed, awaited the enemy. Turnus, riding hard, had left the slow main column far behind. Now he turned up before the camp with 20 chosen horsemen. A Thracian piebald was his mount, his helm all golden with a crimson plume. He shouted, "Who will it be, men? Who will join with me to open the attack? Look here!" He cast high in the air his spinning javelin, first in that fight. Then the tall horseman rode straight onward in the open field. His troop took up the cry and galloped after him with a wild din, yelling astonishment at Trojans' faint hearts. "They won't risk themselves in the open in a fair fight, won't come down to stand up to us. How they hug the camp!" Now Turnus, furiously this way and that, rode round the walls and looked for a way in, where there was none. As a wolf on the prowl, round a full sheepfold, howls at crevices, enduring wind and rain at dead of night, while nestled safe under the yews, the lambs keep up their bleating. He, beside himself, tormented by accumulated hunger, jaws athirst for blood, in all his fury cannot reach them, rend them. So the Rutulian flared up with helpless rage at what he saw of walls and camp, a fever in his bones. How could he work an entrance? By what course dislodge the shut-in Trojans from their rampart, get them to issue on the plain? The fleet! Next to the camp it lay, shielded by earthworks, on the land side and by the running stream. He rode for it, calling his cheering men to bring up fire, and he, himself inflamed, took up a blazing pine torch in his hand. Then, as his presence urged them on, they all rode to and fro in earnest to arm themselves with evil torches, tearing campfires apart as fuming brands gave off a pitchy glare, and Vulcan clouded heaven with smoke and ash. Now, which of the immortals, Muse, dispelled that cruel conflagration from the Trojans? Who turned those fires from the ships? Tell me the old belief and the eternal tale. In those days when Aeneas shaped his fleet on Phrygian Ida and prepared to sail the deep sea, then the mother of the gods, the Berecynthian, addressed great Jove. Son, now Olympus owns your mastery. Grant your dear mother what she asks of you. There was a forest of pines I loved for years, a grove high on a mountain crest, where men brought offerings to me, a dusky place, with dark pine trees and a tall stand of maple. These I gladly gave to the Dardan prince when he required a fleet. But now a pang of fear has made my heart contract. Relieve my anguish, let your mother's plea avail in this, that those ships' timbers not be breached or swamped on any course by any storm, but let their birth and growth here on our mountains prosper them all. But in reply her son, who makes the firmament revolve, demurred. What swerving, mother, do you ask of fate? What privilege for these your ships? Shall hulls that mortal hands have made enjoy a right that only immortals have? And shall Aeneas go secure through insecurities and dangers? Which of the gods can wield that power? Rather, when they have done their work and moored in the Ausonian ports one day, those ships that have escaped the storm waves and brought home the Dardan hero to Laurentine lands, then I shall strip away their mortal shape, and make them at my bidding goddesses of the great deep, like Doto, Nereus' child, and Galatea in the mid-sea foam, breasting their way. So ran the pledge of Jove, ratified when by his Stygian brothers' rivers, boiling banks, and black whirlpool, he took oath, nodding, making all Olympus tremble at his nod. Now, then, the promised hour had come. The overshadowing fates had filled the appointed time. Now havoc planned by Turnus roused the mother to keep away his firebrands from her blessed halls. Fresh light shone in men's eyes. A great cloud from the east appeared to storm across the sky with Ida's retinue of Cybele. Then a voice to chill the blood came falling through the air, and reached all ranks, Rutulian and Trojan. No desperate rallying to defend my ships, you Trojans! No equipping men for that! Turnus may sooner fire the sea itself than hulls of holy pine. Ships, now go free, go as sea goddesses, your mother sends you. Each broke her hawser instantly. Their bows went under like a school of dolphins diving into the depths. Then wondrously came up so many virgin forms now seaward bound. The astounded troop drew back. As horses reared, Messapus, even he, was terrified. The river halted with a raucous noise as Tiber turned back from the sea. But Turnus's fiery confidence held. In quick response he blazed at them to give them heart. These wonders are all aimed at the Trojans. Jove himself has robbed them of their usual ally, not waiting for our swords and fires to do it. The open sea is closed to Trojans now. Now they have no way out. That element is taken from them, and dry land is ours, where all the tribes of Italy, men in thousands, take up arms. Those fateful oracles, so called, on which the Phrygians plume themselves, terrify me not in the least. Enough and more has now been granted Fate and Venus, seeing the Trojans reached Ausonian lands. I have my fate as well, to combat theirs, to cut this criminal people down, my bride being stolen. Pain over such a loss is not for the Atreidae only, nor may only Mycenae justly have recourse to arms. Enough that Trojans perished once? Their sin that once had been enough, were they not still given to hatred of all womankind? They get their courage from a wall between us, ditches to put us off, a paltry space from massacre for them. Did they not see the walls of Troy, built up by Neptune's hand, collapse in flames? Which one of you picked men is ready with his blade to breach their wall and rush their flustered camp with me? I need no arms from Vulcan, nor 1,000 ships to take these Trojans on. Let the Etruscans all be quick to join them as allies. They need not fear sneak thievery by night of their Palladium, guards on the height cut down, nor will we hide in a horse's pitch-dark belly. Openly by day, I'll have their ramparts ringed with flame, by God! I'll see to it they won't suppose they're fighting with Danaans, Pelasgian troops Hector held off 10 years. Now, though, seeing the day's best hours are gone, be of good cheer, men. After the day's good action, rest and be fed. A fight's in preparation. You can be sure of that. In the interim, Messapus had the duty of placing men outside the gates and watchfires round the ramparts. 14 officers were assigned to guard the perimeter, with 100 men to each in crimson helmet plumes and glinting gold. Scattering to their posts, they manned the watch by turns, and settled on the grass at ease to drink their wine, tipping the brazen bowls. The campfires gave them light, and wakeful sentries passed the night in gaming. From their ramparts, overlooking the scene, the Trojans watched. Anxiously they had tried and braced the gates, joined catwalks to their battlements, and brought fresh missiles up. Mnestheus had charge of this with grim Serestus, for the lord Aeneas appointed them, if a crisis called for it, to keep order in troops and settlement. On the alert along the walls, the legion faced the danger, each his share of it, guarding in turn what each one had to guard. Nisus guarded a gate, a man at arms with a fighting heart. Hyrtacus' son, the huntress Ida had sent him to Aeneas' side, a quick hand with a javelin and arrows. Euryalus was his comrade, handsomer than any other soldier of Aeneas, wearing the Trojan gear, a boy whose cheek bore though unshaven manhood's early down. One love united them, and side by side they entered combat, as that night they held the gate on the same watch. And Nisus said, "This urge to action, do the gods instill it? Or is it each man's desire a god to him, Euryalus? For all these hours I've longed to engage in battle, or to try some great adventure. In this lull I cannot rest. You see how confident the Rutulians are. Their watchfire lights wink few and far between. They've all lain down in wine and drowsiness, and the whole place is quiet. Now attend to a thought I'm turning over in my mind, a plan that grows on me. Recall Aeneas. Everyone, seniors, all our folk demand. Dispatch men to report to him. Will they now promise the reward I ask for you? The glory of the feat's enough for me. Below that rise of ground there I can find, I think, a way through to Fort Pallanteum." Taken aback, his love of glory stirred, Euryalus replied to his ardent friend, "And me? Are you refusing me my place beside you in this great affair? Must I send you alone into such danger? Born for that was I, and trained for that, amid the Argive terror, those hard hours of Troy, by a true fighter, one inured to battle, my father Opheltes? Never till now have I behaved so at your side, and as a soldier pledged to see Aeneas' destiny through. Believe me, here's a spirit that disdains mere daylight. I hold life well spent to buy that glory you aspire to." Nisus answered, "Not for a minute had I any qualms about you on that score. Unthinkable. Witness great Jupiter, or whoever else may favor this attempt, by bringing me in triumph back to you. But if some god or accident defeats me, and one sees miscarriage of bold missions many a time, you must live on. Your age deserves more life. If I am dragged free from a fight or ransomed, let there be someone who can bury me. Or if, as often, bad luck rules that out, someone who can carry out the ritual for me though I'm not there, and honor me with an empty tomb, then too I would not bring such grief on your poor mother, one who dared, as many mothers did not, child, to come this far with you, taking no care for shelter behind Acestes' walls." But the boy said, "Your reasoning is all a waste of breath. Not by an inch has my position changed. Let us be off." With this he roused the watch, men who came up to stand guard in their turn, as he took his relief, matching his stride with Nisus, and they sought the Prince of Troy. Earth's other creatures now had given over care and sleep, forgetful of their toil. But the high Trojan captains, chosen men, held council on the realm's pressing affairs. What action should they take, or who should be their messenger to Aeneas? In the open midcourt of the camp, leaning on spears, gripping their shields, they stood. And Nisus came, Euryalus beside him, eager men who begged for a quick hearing, saying how grave the matter was, worth a commander's time. Iulus moved first to hear the excited pair, ordering Nisus to speak out. He did so, saying, "Soldiers of Aeneas, listen with open minds, and let what we propose be looked on without reference to our years. The Rutulians have quieted down, their wine has put them all to sleep, but we make out an opening for a sortie where the road divides there at the gate nearest the sea, a gap at that point in their line of fires, with only black smoke rising. If you let us take advantage of this to find our way to Aeneas and Palanteum, you'll see us back with plunder before long and slaughter done. No fear the path will fool us. Many times, hunting these valleys, we have come in view of the town's outposts, and we know the river, the whole course of it." Bowed by weight of years and ripe of mind, Aletes here exclaimed, "Gods of our fathers, in whose shadow Troy forever lives, you are not, after all, intent on wiping out the Teucrians, seeing you've given our fighters daring souls and resolute hearts like these." And as he spoke, he took each by the shoulder, took his hand, while tears ran down his cheeks. "What fit rewards for this brave action, soldiers, shall I reckon we can make to you? The best of all the gods will give, and your own sense of duty. Then our devout Aeneas will recompense you in other ways, and soon. So will Ascanius, young as he is. Never will he forget a feat of this distinction." Here Ascanius broke in. "Never indeed, as my well-being wholly depends on father's coming back. By our great household gods, by our hearth god, Lar of Assaracus, by white-haired Vesta's holy chapel, Nisus, hear my vow. Whatever fortune I may have, whatever hope, I now commit to both of you. Recall my father, bring him before my eyes. With him recovered, nothing can be grim. Then I shall give 2 cups well shaped in silver, rough with embossing, that my father took the day Arisba fell. Twin tripods too, 2 gold bars, and an ancient wine bowl, gift of Dido the Sidonian. More than this, if it should happen that my father wins the land and throne of Italy, and divides by lot the captured booty, well, you've seen the mount that Turnus rode, the arms he bore, all golden. I exempt the mount, that shield and crimson-crested helmet, from allotment, even now, to be your trophies, Nisus. Father will reward you too with 12 deep-breasted beauties and 12 captive men, each with his armor. Beyond these, whatever private lands the king Latinus owns. But as for you, whose age my own approaches, young but so admirable, I embrace you with my whole heart, and say you'll be my friend in all future adventures. There shall be no labor for distinction in my life, in wartime or in time of peace, without you. Whether in speech or action, all my trust goes now to you." Euryalus answered him, "The day will never come when I shall prove unequal to this kind of mission, hard and daring as it is, if only fortune turns to our benefit, and not against us. One gift above all gifts I ask of you. My mother comes of the old stock of Priam, and she is here. Poor lady, Ilium, her homeland, could not keep her, neither could Acestes' city walls, from following me. I leave her ignorant of the risks I run, with no leave-taking. Let the present night and your sword arm be witness I could not, Endure my mother's tears. Will you, I beg, console her in her deprivation, help her if she is left without me? Let me take this expectation of your care along. I shall face danger with a lighter heart. This moved the Dardan officers to tears, Iulus most of all. Thoughts of his own devotion to his father wrung his heart. When he had wept, he said, "Be sure of it. All here will be conducted worthily of the great thing you undertake. That mother will be mine, only the name Creusa wanting to her, and I shall not stint in gratitude for parenthood so noble. Whatever comes of your attempt, I swear, as once my father did by my own life, that all I promise on your safe return holds likewise for your mother and your kin." So he spoke out in tears, and from his shoulder lifted on its belt his gilded sword, a marvel of craft. It had been forged and fitted to an ivory sheath by the Gnosian Lycaon. To Nisus Menecius gave a lion's pelt and shaggy mane, and steadfast old Aletes made an exchange of helmets. Both now armed, they set out, followed to the gate by all the company of officers, with prayers from young and old. And in particular, princely Iulus, thoughtful, responsible beyond his years, gave many messages to carry to his father. These the winds of heaven scattered, every one unheard, and puffed them to the clouds. The messengers now issued from the gate, traversed the trench, and made their way through darkness toward the encampment, deadly to them. Still, before the end, they were to bring a bloody death on many. Now, everywhere they saw, in drunken sleep, lax bodies on the grass, up-tilted chariots along the river, forms of men at rest amid the reins and wheels, arms lying there where wine-cups also lay. The first to speak was Nisus, and he said, "Euryalus, here I must dare to use my sword. The case cries out for it. Our path lies there. But you, keep watch, keep well alert all round about for any stroke against us from behind. Ahead, I'll devastate them right and left and take you through." He broke off whispering to lunge at Rhamnes, the proud man, propped up on rugs and snoring loud, lungs full of sleep. A king himself and augur to King Turnus, now by no augury could he dispel his evil hour. 3 of his bodyguards, who lay nearby at random by their spears, Nisus dispatched. Then Remus's armorer, and then his charioteer, discovered prone under the very horses' feet. The swordsmen slashed their drooping necks. Then he beheaded Remus himself, their lord, and left the trunk to spout dark blood. By the warm blood the ground and bedding were all soaked. Next Lamyrus and Lamus died, and so did Serranus, a handsome soldier, who had played at dice that night for hours, and now lay undone by abundant Bacchus. Lucky this man had been if he had made his gambling last night into the dawn. Think of an unfed lion, havocing crowded sheepfolds, being driven mad by hunger, how with his jaws he rends and mauls the soft flock dumb with fear, and growls and feeds with bloody maw. Euryalus carried out equal slaughter, all inflamed, as he too fell upon the nameless ranks of sleeping soldiery. Then he attacked Fadus, Erbessus, Rhoetus, Abarus, unconscious men. But Rhoetus came awake and took in everything, struck dumb with fear, trying to hide behind a huge wine bowl. Full in the chest as he arose, the Trojan plunged his blade up to the hilt and drew it backward, streaming death. Dying, the man belched out his crimson life, wine mixed with blood, as the hot killer like a cat pressed on. He came then to Messapus's company, their fires burning low, their tethered horses grazing the meadow. But now Nisus spoke in a curt whisper, for he saw his friend carried away by slaughter and lust for blood. "Let us have done," he said. "The dawn's at hand and dangerous. We've made them pay enough. We've cut our way through." Turning now, they left a quantity of booty, solid silver, armor, wine bowls, handsome rugs. Euryalus took medals and a golden studded belt from Rhamnes, gifts the rich man Caedicus in the old days had sent to Remulus of Tibur as a distant guest friend's pledge, and Remulus at death had passed them on to his own grandson, at whose death in war the Rutulians had got them. These the boy tore off, and fitted to his torso, tough and stalwart as it was, though all in vain. Then donned Messapus's helm with its high plume, as the marauders put the camp behind them, making for safety. At that hour, horsemen, sent ahead from the city of Latinus, other troops being halted on the plain, came bringing answers to the prince to Turnus, horsemen 300 strong, all bearing shields, with Vulcans in command. Nearing the camp and riding toward the rampart, they caught sight of the two Trojans over there who veered on the leftward path. Euryalus' helmet in the clear night's half-darkness had betrayed him, glimmering back as he had not foreseen dim rays of moonlight. And the horsemen took sharp notice of that sight. Troop leader Vulcan shouted, "Soldiers, halt! What's this patrol? Who are you two in arms there, and where bound?" They offered no reply to him, but made all speed into a wood, putting their trust in darkness there. Troopers rode left and right to place themselves at the familiar byways until they had the wood encircled, every exit under guard. The wood itself covered much ground, all bristling underbrush, dark ilex, and dense briars everywhere, the path a rare trace amid tracks grown over. Deep night under the boughs and weight of booty slowed Euryalus, and fear confused him as to the pathway. Nisus, unsuspecting, got free of the wood, escaped the foe, ran past the places later known as Alban, Latinus's high-fenced cattle pastures then. But all at once he stopped and looked around, in vain for his lost friend. "Euryalus! Poor fellow, where did I lose you? Where shall I hunt for you? Back all that winding way, that maze of woodland?" Backward in his tracks, as he recalled them, now he went and strayed through silent undergrowth. He heard the horses, heard the clamoring calls of the pursuit, and after no long interval a cry came to his ears. Euryalus now he saw set upon by the whole troop, first undone by darkness and the treacherous terrain, now overwhelmed by the sudden rush of men who dragged him off, though right and left he strove. Now what could Nisus do? What strength had he? What weapons could he dare a rescue with? Should he then launch himself straight at the foe, through many wounds hastening heroic death? His arm drawn back, hefting his javelin, he glanced at the high, quiet moon and prayed, "Thou goddess, thou be near and help my effort, Latona's daughter, glory of the stars, and guardian of the groves. If Hyrtacus, my father, ever brought gifts to thy altars, votive gifts for me, if I myself have honored thee out of the hunting spoils with offerings, hung in thy dome or fixed outside upon thy sacred roof, now let me throw this troop into confusion, guide my weapon through the air." He made the cast, with all the force and spring of his whole body, and through the darkness of the night the javelin, whipping on, hit Solomo's back and snapped there, putting a splinter through his diaphragm. The man rolled on the ground and vomited a hot flood, even as he himself grew chill with long convulsions. All the rest peered round this way then that. All the more savagely the assailant hefts a second javelin back to his ear. Now see commotion, hear the whizzing shaft. It splits the skull of Tagus side to side and sticks in the cleft's hot brain. Now Vulcans in a wild rage nowhere saw the man who threw the missile, could not tell in what quarter to hurl himself. All right, he said, you then! You'll pay with your hot blood for both my men! And with his sword unsheathed, he went straight for Euryalus. Now truly, mad with terror, Nisus cried aloud. He could not hide in darkness any longer, could not bear his anguish any longer. No, me, here I am, I did it! Take your swords to me, Rutulians! All the trickery was mine. He had not dared do anything. He could not. Heaven's my witness, and the stars that look down on us. All he did was care too much for a luckless friend. But while he clamored, Vulcan's blade thrust hard, passed through the ribs, and breached the snow-white chest. Euryalus, in death, went reeling down, and blood streamed on his handsome length. His neck, collapsing, let his head fall on his shoulder, as a bright flower cut by a passing plough will droop and wither slowly, or a poppy bow its head upon its tired stalk when overborne by a passing rain. Now Nisus plunged ahead into the crowd of men, and made for Vulcans only, one of them all, concerned only with Vulcans. All around him enemies grouped to meet him, fend him off to left and right, but onward all the same he pressed his charge, swirling his lightning blade until he sank it in the yelling visage straight before him. So he took that life, even as he died himself. Pierced everywhere, he pitched down on the body of his friend, and there at last, in the peace of death, grew still. Fortunate both, if, in the least, my songs avail, no future day will ever take you out of the record of remembering time, while children of Aeneas make their home around the Capitol's unshaken rock, and still the Roman father governs all. The Rutulians, now victors, with their trophies, bore the dead Vulcans into camp with tears, and tears flowed in the camp as well at finding Rhamnes bled to death, and many captains taken off at one stroke in that slaughter, even as Numa and Serranus were. A great crowd pressed around the dead and dying, pressed toward the ground still fresh with carnage, foaming rills of blood. The men could recognize the trophies there and point them out, Messapus's shining helm, and medals now regained that had cost toil and sweat in the attack. By this time early dawn, leaving Tithonus's yellow bed, scattered first rays of light over the lands of earth. Down poured the sun, the world stood clear. And Turnus in full armor roused his men to arm. Each officer drew up his line of battle, all in bronze, and soldiers gave their anger a fighting edge, with divers versions of the night attack. The attackers' heads, indeed, a ghastly sight, they fixed on spears, and lifted and bore out in taunting parade. Euryalus and Nisus. Aeneas's men-at-arms on the left flank formed their defending line along the walls, the right enclosed by river. On high towers, having the ditch before them, broad and deep, they stood in sorrow, moved by those grim heads, impaled in dripping gore, heads too well known to their unhappy fellows. In the meantime, rumor on strong wings flying went about the settlement in dread, until it whispered close by Euryalus' mother's ears. Then all at once warm life drained from her body. Shuttle and skein unwound dropped from her hands. She flew outdoors, all wretchedness, and wailed as women do, tearing her hair, and ran to reach the rampart in mad haste, to reach the front line, paying soldiers there no heed to danger, none to missiles. Then she filled heaven's air with keening. Must I see you, even like this, Euryalus? You that were in these last days the comfort of my age, could leave me, could you, cruel boy, alone? Sent into danger so, had you no time for your poor mother's last farewell? Ah, God! You lie now in a strange land, carrion for Latin dogs and birds, and I, your mother, never took you, your body, out for burial, nor closed your eyes, nor washed your wounds, nor dressed you in the fine robe I had been weaving for you night and day in haste before the loom, easing an old woman's pain. But where shall I go now? Where is the earth that holds your trunk dismembered, all your mangled body? Is this all of yourself, my son, that you bring back to me? By sea and land, did I keep this beside me? Put your spears into me, Rutulians, if you can be moved. Let fly your javelins all at me, and let be your first kill. Or else, take pity, Father of the great gods, with your bolt dispatch this hateful soul to the abyss. I cannot else break off my tortured life. All hearts were shaken by her cries, and groans of mourning came from all, their strength for battle broken and benumbed. At the behest of Ilioneus and Iulus, weeping hard, the woman, as she fanned the flame of grief, was brought inside, supported on the arms of Actor and Idaeus, and given rest. But now a far-off trumpet sang in bronze, heart-chilling clamor, and a battle shout re-echoed from the sky, as Volscians charged under cover of shields evenly locked to fill the moat and tear the rampart down. Some tried to find a way over and in with scaling ladders at points lightly manned, where gaps showed in the high line of defenders not so close packed. But with the Trojans, trained in their long war, knew how to hold a wall. They rained all kinds of missiles down and used tough poles to push off climbers. Stones as well of deadly weight they rolled and tumbled over to crack the shield roof ranks. Nevertheless, beneath a tortoise shell so thick, those troops were glad to take their chances. Yet the time came when they could not. Where the massed attackers threatened, Trojans trundled a mass of stone and heaved it down to fell men in a swath and smash their armored shell. Now Rutulians no longer cared to fight blind under shields, but strove to clear the wall with archery. Mezentius in his quarter of the field, a sight to quail at, shook his Etruscan pine, his firebrand, and lobbed in smoking darts. Messapus, Neptune's child, tamer of horses, breached a wall and called for scaling ladders. Calliope, I pray, and muses all, inspire me as I sing the bloody work, the deaths dealt out by Turnus on that day, and tell what men each fighter sent to Orcus. Help me to spread the massive page of war. There was one tower of commanding height, and served by catwalks in a strategic place. Italian troops with might and main struggled to conquer this or bring it down with every trick of siege. And for their part, the Trojans held it with a hail of stones and shafts they shot through loopholes. Turnus now became the first with his thrown torch to lodge a fire in the tower side. Blazing up there with the wind, it caught the planks and clung around the portals it consumed. The garrison, in panic at this horror, having no exit, herded to that side, still free of deadly fire. But the tower, under the sudden shift of weight, crashed down, all heaven thundering with its crash. Men dropped half dead with all that mass of ruin to earth, impaled on their own weapons or run through by cruel splinters. Lycus and Helenor barely escaped, the only ones. The young Helenor, whom a slave, Lycimnia, had borne in secret to Maeonia's king and sent to Troy, although forbidden arms, with naked sword and shield blank, bare of deeds. Now as he saw himself amid 1,000 troops of Turnus, ranks of Latins waiting here and others there, as a wild beast pinned by a band of hunters in a ring, will rage against their spears and hurl himself upon sure death, with one leap upon the spear points. In the same way the young man, facing death, rushed at the enemy, and where he saw the spears were thickest, there he aimed his charge. But Lycus, being far quicker on his feet, made for and gained the wall amid the enemy, amid their missiles trying to reach the top, and outstretched hands of friends. But on his heels ran Turnus with his spear, and won the race, taunting him, "Did you hope to get away, you madman, from our hands?" And taking hold of the man hanging there, he tore him down with a big chunk of wall, as when the bird who bears Jove's bolt takes wing, lugging a hare or snowy swan aloft in crooked talons, or when Mars's wolf steals from the fold a lamb whose mother bleating seeks it. Everywhere the shouting rose as Rutulians fought onward, filling the moat with piled up earth, while some tossed high upon the rooftops burning brands. Casting a stone, a piece of mountain crag, Ilioneus brought down Lucetius as he approached a gate carrying fire. Liger killed Amathion, and Astylas killed Corineus. A javelin man won over a bowman's deafness from a distance. Caenis brought Ortygius down, and Caeneus, even as he triumphed, fell to Turnus. Turnus then killed Itys and Clonius, Dioxippus and Promulus, then Sagaris and Idas high on the battlement, but Capys killed Privernus. First Thamila's point had grazed him so that he lost his head and threw his shield down, bringing his hand up to the wound. Therefore the winging arrows sank in his left side, and, deeply embedded, broke the inner vents of breath with a mortal wound. In great style fitted out, the son of Arcen stood in his cloak with figured needlework, all vivid Spanish blue, a brilliant sight. Brought up in Mars wood by Symaethus stream, and where Palicus's altar stands, enriched by offerings appeasable and mild, the young man had been sent to war by Arcens. Mezentius dropped his spears, then made a sling go whipping round his head 3 times as he put stress upon it, and he split the adversary's temples with a molten leaden slug, knocking him down a splay on a bank of sand. At this point, it is said, Ascanius first aimed a shaft in war. In days before, he had been used to scare wild game in flight. But with one shot he brought a strong man down, Numanus, Remulus by added name, who late had married Turnus's younger sister. Now this captain strode ahead and shouted boast that had or had not dignity, inflated as he was by his new status. He swashbuckled and cried, What, not ashamed to be besieged again, pinned by a rampart, walling yourselves away from death? You Phrygians, twice conquered, look, see those who claim our wives, prizes of war. What god, what madness brought you to Italy? Here are no Atridae. Here is no artful talker like Ulysses. Tough pioneers, our stock. Our newborn sons we take to the river first to harden them in wilderness waves, ice cold. Our boys are keen at hunting, and they wear the forest out. Their pastimes are horse taming and archery. Hard labor, too, and a life of poverty our young men are inured to. They can crumble earth with hoes or shake walled towns in war. Our life is worn away with iron. A spear reversed will goad an ox, and slow old age enfeebles no man's bravery or vigor. No, we press down helms on our white hair, and all our days delight in bringing home fresh plunder and in good freebooter fare. You people dress in yellow and glowing red. You live for sloth and you go in for dancing. Sleeves to your tunics, ribbons to your caps. Phrygian women in truth, not Phrygian men. Climb Mount Dindima, where the double pipes make song for the effete, where the small drums and the Idaean mothers bear a Scythian boxwood flute, are always wheedling you. Leave war to fighting men, give up the sword. As he broadcast these insults and hard words, Ascanius could not abide the man. He turned and set a shaft on his bowstring, taut horse gut, and he drew the arms apart, then stood to make petition to high Jove. Almighty Jupiter, only give consent to this attempt, this venture. I shall bring thy temple gifts in my own hands each year, and place a snowy bullock at thy altar, gold leaf on his brow, grown up to hold his head high as his mother's, then to charge with lowered horns and paw the sand with hooves. This prayer the father heard. From a clear sky he thundered on the left, just as the bow sang out, freighted with doom. The springing shaft, under high tension, made a fearful whistle, flying to pass clean through the head of Remulus, cleaving both temples with its shank of steel. Go on, please. Mock our courage with windy talk. Twice conquered Phrygians return this answer to the Rutulians. Only this, Ascanius called out. The Trojans cheered, echoing him in joy, lifting up their hearts. At that moment, in the quarter of high air, Apollo with flowing hair from a throne of cloud looked down upon Ausonian troops and town. He spoke to the victor Iulus. Blessed be your new-found manhood, child. By striving so, men reach their stars. Dear son of gods and sire of gods to come, all fated wars will quiet down and justly in the end, under descendants of Assaracus. For Troy no longer bounds you. As he spoke, he put himself in motion out of heaven, parting the smoothly blowing winds to make his way down to Ascanius. And then he changed into an ancient man, Butes, the armor-bearer of Anchises and faithful doorkeeper in the old days, now in aid given Ascanius by his father. Apollo walked like Butes to the life. He had the voice, his coloring, his white hair, his grimly clinking arms, and now he said to Iulus in his ardor, Let it suffice that Numanus met death by your good shot, without retaliation, son of Aeneas. This feat of arms your first mighty Apollo grants you, and he feels no jealousy for the weapon matched with his, only refrain from other acts of war. But even as he thus broke into words, midway in speech, Apollo quitted mortal vision, fading fast into thin air and distance. Dardan captains glimpsed the god and the god's bow and heard his quiver clanging as he went away. Therefore, despite his eagerness for battle, they kept Ascanius from it by command and will of Phoebus, while they all themselves pushed forward once again to join the fight and put themselves in danger. Battle cries ran tower to tower along the entire wall as men bent springing bows or twisted thongs on javelins to whip them out. The ground was littered with flung missiles. Shields and helms rang out as they were hit, and the fierce fight mounted as when a storm out of the west, when the young goats, the rainy stars arise, lashes the earth, or as when clouds descend in thick hail on the deep, and Jupiter goes rough with south wind, making the downpour veer, and bursts the cloudy arches of the sky. Two brothers, sons of Alcanor of Ida, Pandarus and Bitias, whom Eira, nymph of the woods in Jove's wood, reared to manhood, tall as their native pines and hills, relying on their arms alone, unbarred and opened the gate their captain had assigned them, daring the enemy to come in. The two then took their stand inside, to right and left, before the gate towers. They were mailed in steel, their heads adorned with high and windy crests, as hard by rivers, on the banks of Po, or near the lovely Adige, twin oaks go soaring high in air, and lift their heads into the sky with foliage uncut, and nod their utmost tops. The Rutulians now stormed the entrance when they saw it clear, and in a moment Quercens and Aquiculus, a handsome soldier, and foolhardy Tamaris, Haemon as well, a son of the god Mars, with all their men were turned and put to flight, or else lay down their lives at the very gate. Then anger grew in fighting hearts. The Trojans, shoulder to shoulder, closed in on that place for combat hand to hand, and dared to sortie. Elsewhere, as he raged and scattered foes, the commander, Turnus, heard from a messenger that, blooded with fresh kills, his adversaries were offering combat at an open gate. He dropped his action in a towering rage to rush the entry and the insolent brothers. First to be brought down by his javelin cast, the first to sortie, was Antiphates, bastard of tall Sarpedon, by a Theban. Winging through the soft air, the Italian cornel shaft sank in deep in the chest, stuck there, and the black wound's open chasm yielded a foaming wave of blood. The steel grew warm in the transfixed lung. Then with his blade he brought down Meropes and Iramas, and then Aphidnus. Finally Bitias, the fiery-eyed, all energy of heart, not with a javelin, for he would not give his life up to a javelin. No, a pike, a great beam given a spin with a rushing noise that struck with impetus like a thunderbolt. His shield's two bulls' hides were not proof against it, nor was his coat of trusty mail with lapping scales of gold. Giant-like he reeled and fell, earth groaned, and his great shield came thundering down. Just as at Baiae on the Euboean shore, a rocky pier, first built of massive blocks, goes over as men upend it in the sea, creating surface havoc with its plunge, to rest deep on the sea floor, as the water seethes around it and the black sands rise. And at the crashing sound, that high-peaked isle, Procida shakes, and so does Ischia, Typhoeus' flint bed, fixed by Jove's command. On this the god of warfare Mars instilled new heart and vigor in the Latin troops, goading them on, and sent among the Trojans rout and black dread. The attackers flowed from every quarter. Now their chance had come, and he, the god of battle, swept their souls. Pandarus, seeing his brother in the dust, seeing where fortune lay, how the tide turned, pushed to shut the gate with his broad shoulders, turning it with a great heave on its hinge. He left outside a number of his own in desperate combat, but took others in as they turned back pell-mell. Demented man, not to have seen the Rutulian prince burst in among them, close packed there. By his free act he shut the prince inside the town, a tiger mingling with cowed cattle. Turnus's eyes shone out with new light as a deadly clang came from his armor. On his helmet crest the plume shook, red as blood, and from his shield he flashed out rays like lightning. Taken aback, Aeneas's soldiers knew that hated face and that gigantic figure. Pandarus flared up, hot with rage for his dead brother, calling, "Here is no bridegroom's royal house from Amata, no Ardean inner court to comfort Turnus with his native walls. Your enemy's fortress camp is what you see, and not the faintest chance of getting away." But smiling calmly at him, Turnus answered, "Step forward, if you have the heart for it. Come within range. You will be telling Priam Achilles has been found again, and here." Well, that was all. And the other man let fly his knotty spear shaft, bearing bark untrimmed with his whole strength. But only the blowing air incurred its flight, for Juno warded off impact and wound. It stuck fast in the gate. "Not from this blade, the stroke of my sword arm, will you escape. The man responsible for wound and weapon is no bungler." Turnus spoke, and rose to full height, sword in air, then cleft the man's brow square between the temples, cutting his head in two, a dreadful gash between the cheeks, all beardless. Earth resounded, quivering at the great shock of his weight, as he went tumbling down in all his armor, drenched with blood and brains. In equal halves his head hung this and that way from his shoulders. Trojans, aghast, turned round in a stampede, and if the thought had come to the champion to break the gate bars to admit his friends, that would have been the last day of the war, the last for Trojans. But high rage and mindless lust for slaughter drove the passionate man against his enemies. He caught Philaris first, and Gyges, slashing from behind their leg tendons. Then he took their spears to throw at the backs of men in flight, and Juno gave him heart and force. Next he dispatched Halys to join the rest, and Phegeus, his shield run through, and men still on the walls, unwary there and urging on the fight. Alcandrus, Helios, Noemon, Pyrtanus, as Lynceus came against him, shouting out to his companions, Turnus on the rampart whirled from the right a great sword stroke and struck him one blow as he closed, taking off his head, which dropped still helmeted at a distance. Next he killed Amycus, nemesis of game, unmatched at poisoning lance and arrow points, and Clytius, a son of Aeolus, and Cretheus, a familiar of the Muses, ever in love with guitar and harp and song and tuning notes on strings, forever chanting war horses and wars and feats of arms. The Teucrian commanders, at long last, hearing of carnage wrought among their people, came on the scene, Mnestheus and grim Serestus, finding their troops distraught, the enemy at large inside, and Mnestheus shouted at them, "Where do you think you'll run, then, after this? What walls, what fortress have you in reserve? In a single man, hemmed in by your own ramparts on all sides, countrymen, going to cause a massacre like this throughout the town, and not be stopped? Will he dispatch so many of our best men to Orcus? You poltroons, have you no shame, no pity for your own unhappy country, for the gods of old, for great Aeneas? Burning at these words, they stiffened and stood fast in close array. Now Turnus gradually edged away from combat, moving toward the riverside, where the stream closed the camp. Fiercer at this, the Trojans with a battle cry began to advance against him, massing ranks, as when a crowd with deadly lances at the ready corners, a savage lion, in his fear, still dangerous and glaring balefully, he backs away, as neither wrath nor courage allows him to turn tail. Yet he's unable, yearn though he may, to charge the men and weapons. Likewise, of two minds, Turnus kept stepping backward in no haste, seething with rage, and even twice he turned to charge his foes, putting them to flight twice, broken along the walls. But then the entire garrison on the run formed up in a solid mass, and Juno dared not give him power to match theirs. Jupiter sent out of heaven Iris, born on air, to tell his sister his unkind decrees, should Turnus not depart the Trojan ramparts. Therefore neither his shield nor his sword arm availed the man to hold out in the end, stormed at by missiles from all sides. His helm rang out around his head with constant blows, the bronze dented by stones, the horsehair crest knocked off, and neither could his shield boss take that battering. Now with redoubled force the Trojans cast their spears. Menestheus himself a lightning spearman cast. Down Turnus's body, streaming sweat made rivers black as pitch. He could not get his breath, his gasping shook, his arms and shoulders wearied out. At last, head first, in all his armor, down he plunged into the river in one leap. Old Tiber welcomed the diver in his yellow depth, buoyed him up to the surface in mild water, with carnage washed away, and floated him exultant to his fellow soldiers' hands.